I've shown this tip before a long time ago, but if you keep a Wago connector and a piece of wire, you can make a key ring to keep on your van keys. And then whenever you want, you can remove it and you've got a handy little link wire for fault finding. What's up guys, happy Sunday. Thanks for tuning in to my latest video, The Life of a Jobbing Plumber. So I've had a busy week this week, pretty standard week, finishing off an install, boiler breakdowns, gas certificates, plumbing repairs, stuff like that. But for some reason on Friday I was a right mardy bastard. Everything was pissing me off. I had too much to do, I was hungry, it was hot, the sun was out. I had so much to do that I was turning jobs down for the Friday, just couldn't fit anything else in. I'd already overbooked myself, which I always do. So stuff was piling up on the Saturday as well. So that was getting me down. And I don't know, everything was pissing me off. I was parked on a drive and there was a camber light. The drive was like on the tilt. My van, every time I opened the back doors, shut themselves on me. It was trapping me in. My van was a tip anyway because it was Friday. I was just raging. And there was this one guy, I'd serviced his boiler, and he said, while you're here, can you look at the kitchen sink? There was a split on the plastic thread on the basket waste, and I didn't have one on the van, so I said I'd come back on Friday and do it for you. And it was getting later and later in the day. I knew I was going to go, I was going to fit it in, but he kept bugging me about it. And I was so tempted to just text back and put, it was only a boiler service. Fuck the job, fuck the sink. Fuck everything, but I resisted the urge and I got there about 7:15, got it done. Why they couldn't have waited till the next day, it wasn't their only sink, it was a bowl and a half thing. So yeah, I was just pissed off. I did manage to, the gym shuts at 9 on a Friday, I managed to get there at 7:15, so I got a bit of a session in. Once I'd done that, I was fine. So yeah, we all get like that. So yeah, standard video this week. Hopefully it's a good one you're going to enjoy. I've got some news. I've got my first ever channel sponsor. So I've got to say a big thank you to Tradify. It's a job management app. It's going to allow me to make more videos. It's going to give me the freedom to do that. And also I'm hoping it's going to change my life because I'm very good at working. I am not very good at doing paperwork, doing the admin side of the business. So keeping myself organized. I tend to write stuff down on bits of cardboard, bits of box on the job and forget about it. I forget where I've been, where I've promised I'll go to. There's probably hundreds of people out there who I've done jobs for and never actually sent them an invoice because I just forget. So hopefully this job management app is going to change my life. As I start using it and getting used to it, I'll show you how I'm getting on with it and some of the features. But for now, I'm brand new to it. There'll just be a little bit of an introduction. So I'll shut up now. Let's get on with the video. I hope you enjoy it and I'll see you in the comments. So we've got a Worcester 28i and they've got no heating or hot water. So sounds like the fan's coming on. But then nothing else after that, it just sits. Doesn't even try and spark. When I got here, the fan was running and it was just doing nothing. And it's the same for the hot water, if I run the tap. Nothing. So we'll do a bit of fault finding and see what we can work out the problem is. Now on a boiler like this with a fan and air pressure switch, the first thing I will try is, so we'll create a demand. Get the fan going. I'm just going to undo this one screw. Let some extra air in. You can hear that whistling now. Let's see if that makes any difference. So we can rule out a fan and an air pressure switch issue, I reckon, because I would have expected that to fire up. So the second most obvious thing on these is it's got a manual overheat stat or a cut-off stat. So you've got a temperature probe in there, and if that overheats, this little button on the top pops out and resets. And you can normally tell, because if you touch it and it's loose, it's okay, but if you touch it and you feel like you can press it in, it means it's reset. And what that does is it interrupts the supply to the PCB, so it can't, the fan can run, the pump can run, but it can't go into its ignition sequence if this is activated. So what I do now is I'll call for demand again, and pop that button in. You should hear it click. Ready? So it's clicked, so now we should. There we go. So the boiler's obviously overheated and tripped that stat. I'm saying it's got water in it, so maybe it's just the age of it. Maybe it's a bit blocked. The primary heat exchanger, maybe it's all caked up and it's just got too hot. But I'm going to run it now for a bit and see what happens. We'll check the primary flow and return temperatures, see what we're getting. So I've got my temperature clamps on. Heating's been running for a few minutes, and I've got a differential of 14 degrees between the flow and return. So it doesn't seem like it's overheated. It's been on a good 10 minutes now. One of the possibilities, obviously the pressure's good now, but possibly because it's tenanted property and they're not here, the boiler might have had no pressure in. They've run it, it's overheated, and then they've tried to fix it by putting pressure in, but they didn't know about the manual reset. So there's a chance that the boiler was running dry, which is why it overheated. That seems to be working fine. Just while we're looking at this boiler, you'll notice it's a combi, but there's no plate heat exchanger. That's because the central heating, flow and return go into the main heat exchanger on the right side, and the cold water inlet, which is this one with the flow switch on, uses the main heat exchanger as well, just with a different coil inside there, and then comes out this one hot, and you've got a temperature sensor for the hot water there. So basically you open the cold tap, this starts spinning, tells the circuit board that someone's opened the tap, boiler fires up, and it picks up the heat from the main heat exchanger the same as the heating does, and then comes out this pipe hot, which I'll show you now with the, we'll use this and show you. So I've got one on my incoming cold and one on my hot. Currently they're about the same. Cold's the top one, 17.5, and the hot is 21. Obviously there's no room in the tap at the minute. When I open the tap, I'd expect this one to get colder and this one starts to heat up. So open the hot tap. See, the fresh cold water's coming in. Well, it's quite a warm day today. Should get down to about 10 degrees, I reckon. And then the hot will slowly get hotter. Well, 11 degrees on the cold. It's quite a warm day today. So normal combi, you're looking at a 35 degree temperature rise, and that, remember we've spoken about this before, that depends on your flow rate. So the faster the water comes through, the less performance you'll get out of the boiler. So we're getting a 32 degree rise, 10 degrees on the incoming main, 42 outlet. Now what we can do, just to prove this point, if I slow the tap down, so decrease the flow rate there, now we should see the hot get a lot hotter. So we're jumping up now, 40 degree difference, we've gone over 50 degrees now with the water, just from slowing the speed down. So less flow rate, better performance. Let's level that at about 50, now it's going up still. So we've now got a 45 degree rise. Let's climb even more, the boiler's still going. 46 degree rise, and then if we open the tap back up, drops back down again. I was hoping this was going to be an air pressure fault so I could show you some tips with a multimeter, but unfortunately it wasn't, but I'm still going to show you some bits. So I'm just going to show you how to test this air pressure switch. You see we've got 3 wires connected there, brown, green and white. And I'm going to show you what you should get when the boiler's idle, so no demand, and then what you should get when there is demand. So get your multimeter and we're going to change it to continuity. There's no voltage on this one. Obviously if you're using a multimeter, make sure you know how to use it, all that kind of stuff. Use your proving unit, etc, etc. But when you're happy with that, so we're just looking for continuity. The first test we're going to do is with the boiler idle, we're going to check between the brown and the white. So let's pop the probe into the brown there and the white there, and we should get continuity, which we do. And then if I put the white one in with the green, I reckon that's it, there we go. So we shouldn't get anything with it idle, but then if we put a demand on, so flick the central heating programmer on. When the fan comes on, then we should get continuity. That's on the brown and the green. I thought I'd better write this out just in case it wasn't clear. So to test your air pressure switch, with the boiler idle, no demand, you should get continuity between the brown and the white on the air pressure switch. If you don't, you've got a faulty air pressure switch. With the boiler on, you then should get continuity between the brown and the green. Now, if you don't, that doesn't necessarily mean you've got a faulty air pressure switch, because that's linked in with the fan. So if your fan wasn't spinning, you won't get that. But if you're happy with the fan, then you're looking for that. If you don't get it, faulty air pressure switch. Right, now I'm going to show you the flow switch on the cold water. So if you, let's say you came to the job and you open the hot tap, the boiler's not firing up. This is the way to test the flow switch, because that's probably what the fault's going to be. So for this one, we're going to voltage DC. And we're checking with the tap not running between the black and the white. So you see I've got one in the white, one in the black. You're looking for 5 volts DC, so that's what we've got. So now I'm going to put this one in with the green. See, now we've got it in the black and the green. And we've got 0 volts. Now when we open the tap, if this starts spinning, it should be halfway between 0 and 5. So we're looking for around 2.5 volts DC. So if I open the tap now, you'll see it change. And because that's now started spinning, we're getting half between the 0 and the 5. It should be around 2.5, but we know that's spinning because it's moved, and also the hot tap's getting hot. So we'll stop that. We'll do the same test between green and white. See, in this one we've got 5 volts, and when we run the tap, again it will half. 3 volts DC. On this one, the greens are common. So the black and the white are the ones that we test between the green. Hope that helps. Like I said at the start of the video, I've now got a channel sponsor, Tradify Job Management. So I'm just going to show you quickly. I've downloaded it onto my Mac. You can also have it on your tablet and on your phone. Everything syncs together. So when you're out on site, you've got your diary, your schedule, you can do quotes, invoices, everything from your phone, and you can do even more from the desktop feature. Now, I'm brand new to this, so I'm not going to show you how it works just yet, but I'll just let you know, I signed up. I had a Zoom call with someone from Tradify. They showed me how everything works, how to do everything. What I like about this is I'm going to be able to link this to my Sage accounting system. So all of my customers, everything will migrate over, and it should be nice and easy to use. The thing I'm most looking forward to using is the diary, because at the minute what I do, I just use my email account. I use the calendar on there, and I have to manually add jobs in. I can't ever like sign a job off to say it's complete. I have to go through and look at what I've done, where I've been. A lot of the time I'm out on site, I write it down on a bit of cardboard that I found. I forget where I've been, who I've sent a bill to, stuff like that. So I'm hoping this app is going to change my life. So as I learn to use it, I'll show you all the new features, everything that I'm liking about it. But if you want to check it out, there's a free 14-day trial. I'll pop a link to it in my video description, because if you use code PB Plumber, you can get 50% off for the first 3 months. It's getting loud up.
Oh, God.
There we go. It's in the lead. Yeah, it's on the lead. So we've got a split there in the lead where it's been wiped onto the pipe. Obviously, the size and shape of that, I'm not going to get a lead lock on it. So what I'm going to do is hammer it over. It's coming out quite what it sometimes will do is break a bit of wood off like a matchstick, jam that in and then hammer that in, and then the wood swells up. I'm just going to try and tap it over with my hammer now and see if that works. So you see there, all I've done is move the lead over that split, and that stopped it leaking. It's only temporary, mind, but at least it's not spraying across the room anymore. So that job you've just watched, I put that on my Instagram this week, and I also put it on TikTok, and that was a big mistake, because on apps, social media apps, if you put a short video like that, a 60-second video, it doesn't really give the viewer context of what was going on. They just see what they see. And you get armchair plumbers, people who aren't qualified to do your job, telling you how you should do your job, and it can get quite annoying. But basically, that job I was called out to at about 7 o'clock one evening. I said I would go as a favour on my way home. So I'm there to basically try and stop the water from pissing out. I'm not there to do any kind of permanent repair. So it was just showing the fact that I had temporarily fixed that to stop the water pissing out and leave the customer with cold water on to the property overnight. And then I can go back at another time, a reasonable hour in the day, when I can actually do the job properly. But people didn't see that, and it was just a tip to show you that you can hammer the lead over to get you out the shit. I left that customer without a leak and with the water on to go back another day and do the job properly. But yeah, you just can't get that across in a short 60-second video like that. So I just wanted to explain it, get it off my chest. This job I did this week was a call out to a house that when they had the hot water on, the radiators were getting hot. So basic 3-port valve issue, nice easy job, but it turned into a complete bastard, as a lot of jobs do. So fault finding on this, normally I tell the customer to leave the system cold, and then I'll put the hot water on only. And then you can tell just by putting your hand on the pipe, if the hot water pipe gets hot on hot water only and the heating pipe doesn't, then the valve's working okay. If the heating pipe gets hot, then we've got a valve issue. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of fault finding on this job. Right guys, so fault finding on a Y plan with a 3-port valve can be quite tricky to get your head around. Now, I'll use a diagram like this, and I'm going to show you basically what you should get when everything's working okay. And when you understand what everything should be when it's working okay, you can apply that to your fault finding. So if you know what it should be and it's not, then you've got a fault and you can sort of work out what's going on. So I'm only going to very basically show you this because I have done a video on this explaining this before, and it does take a while to go through it properly. But basically when I fault find, I start from the programmer. Now, with no demand on, so you're not asking for hot water, you're not asking for central heating, you will have 240 volts on hot water off. So you'll have 240 volts at terminal 7, which means you'll have 240 volts on your grey to the valve. Now with 240 volts on your grey to the valve, it doesn't do anything. The valve doesn't move. When you put a hot water demand on, you will then get 240 volts on terminal 6, which goes into our cylinder stat. Now, if the cylinder stat is satisfied. So we're asking for 60 degrees and our cylinder is at 60 degrees. It sits on number 2, so the 240 volts carries on terminal 2 and back in with number 7. Again, the grey's got 240 volts. Hot water off's got 240 volts going back that way, but that doesn't do anything. The grey's got 240 volts. The valve doesn't do anything, doesn't move. If your cylinder goes below 60, this switch puts the live onto number 1. And then 240 volts goes on to terminal 8, which is our switch live to the pump and the boiler fires up. The orange connects in here, so the orange will also get 240 volts. Again, that doesn't affect the valve, it doesn't do anything. When we select central heating, the voltage goes to number 4, which connects in with our room stat. If the room stat isn't calling, the live stops there. Once the room stat's calling, it goes on to number 3, which connects in with the white wire, and the white gets 240 volts. Now when the white gets 240 volts, this is when things start to happen with the 3-port valve, and I'm going to show you that on a picture I've drawn. So this is my drawing I've done, hopefully to simplify what a 3-port valve does. Now before we start, we've got AB, which is the flow from the boiler, which comes into our 3-port valve like that. And then depending on what we do with the motor, it depends what position the paddle is in to let the heating go through port B, which is our hot water port, so to our cylinder, and through port A, which is to our radiators, which is the heating port. So we'll start off on the left hand picture. Our default position for a 3-port valve is port B to be open. Now if we have no demand on our programmer, so we're not asking for central heating or hot water, we will have 240 volts on our grey into that valve. The valve does nothing, the paddle doesn't move, and the boiler doesn't fire up. So nothing's happening at this point, but we've got 240 volts on the grey. Now if we ask for hot water, we lose the 240 on the grey. The programmer puts a live feed to the cylinder stat, it goes through the cylinder stat, and it fires the boiler up. And at this point, the boiler fires up and we'll get heat come through port B. And also at this point, from the wiring sensor and the programmer, we will get 240 volts coming this way on our orange. But that doesn't affect the valve. Nothing happens in the valve, it stays in this position. So we've got 240 volts and nothing on the grey at this point. Hot water comes on, heat goes to the hot water. If we move on to the next one, 240 volts on the white wire only. So that's central heating on, 240 volts. The paddle moves into mid position, but we can't just have 240 volts on the white. We're either going to have hot water off, so we'd have 240 volts on the grey, or hot water on, 240 volts, again coming this way from the wiring centre. Now, with 240 volts on the white, all that does is move the paddle into mid position to make the boiler fire up and get our heat to come through, and it'll go through both these ports to the radiators and to the hot water. Again, as in this one, with the hot water on, we'll get 240 volts coming back up from the orange. So 240 volt on the white moves the valve into mid position. We get the orange switch live coming back this way, but it doesn't do anything, doesn't connect into anything in this valve, in this scenario. I hope you're with me so far. So now we'll move on to this one. With the hot water off, we get 240 volts on the grey. Central heating on, we get 240 volts on the white. And with these two 240 volts, the paddle moves over to close port B. So now nothing can go to the hot water and it can go to the radiators. And it's in this scenario only, with these two getting 240, does the switch inside the valve on the PCB put that 240 volts onto the orange, and the 240 volts now comes out of the valve. On these two, it's coming in and doing nothing. On this one, it's coming out, and that's our switch live to the boiler on the orange. So 240 on the grey, hot water off, 240 on the white, hot central heating on, moves the paddle across, puts the voltage onto the orange to fire the boiler up, and that's when we get the heat coming through port A to the radiators only. I hope that's made sense. So now we'll try and apply that to the fault I've got on this job, which is the central heating coming on with the hot water. So we select hot water only at the programmer, and then up in the wiring centre, for some reason we've got 240 volts on the white wire, which is central heating on, so we shouldn't have anything on that. And we've also got our 240 volts on the orange. Now that might be okay because we know that when we've got hot water on, we do get 240 volts on the orange. But then we've also got this weird clicking noise from the valve motor, and we're getting voltage cutting in and out on the grey. And even though we're not asking for central heating from the programmer, we've got 240 volts at the room stat. So my suspicion is the valve motor. The circuit board inside the grey and the white and the orange are permanently connected, so it's sending the 240 volts through the valve the wrong way, down the white wire into the room stat. So for the benefit of this video, all I've done is removed the valve motor off, well, the defective valve motor, and I've wired in a new 3-port valve. I've not drained the system at this point, everything's as it was. I've just removed the valve motor, and I thought we'd show the operation of the 3-port valve. So if we go down to the programmer and select hot water only, and then we'll see what happens as opposed to what we were getting with the defective motor on. And straight away we get off to a good start because we've got no voltage down at the room stat. So with hot water only selected at the programmer, you'll see that the 3-port valve doesn't move position, but you can hear that the pump kicks in and the boiler fires up. Now that's letting heat through on this valve, port B, to the hot water. If we then call for central heating at the same time as hot water, you'll see that the white wire gets 240 volts and the paddle moves into the mid position. It's now allowing heat through port B to the hot water and port A to the radiators. So at this point, like we spoke about before, we've got 240 volts on the white, and we're getting our 240 volt switch live to the boiler, which is also connected in with the orange. Now when I select hot water off on the programmer and we've just got central heating calling, we've now got 240 volts on the white and the grey, and that moves the position to block port B. So now the heat can only go through port A to the radiators. When we turn the heating off, so now we're not asking for heating or hot water, the valve is going to get 240 volts on the grey. It's going to move back into its default position, and you'll hear that the boiler has now gone off. This is when I need one of them olive pullers. So got these two off okay, but I cannot get this one off, and there's hardly any room. I think I've moved it a tiny bit, but I can't cut the olive because the nut's in the way. So yeah, one of those olive pullers would be great right about now. Like I said at the start of this video, this job was a bastard. I just couldn't get that nut off. In the end, I had to cut it off with an angle grinder. Yeah, some jobs that are, simple, bread and butter, easy jobs can turn into right fuckers. And there's the nut. I had to cut it both sides to let me get it out. So the job's all done now. Now we had the issue with the heating was coming on with the hot water, which is all fixed. And the way that we would test this on site is you just put your hand on it and feel the temperature. But I can't prove to you that it's fixed by putting my hand on it. And also, if you've got a landlord or a customer that lives somewhere else, you can't prove it to them either, which is when a thermal imaging camera comes in handy. So you can see here, with just hot water selected, we've only got heat coming up through port AB and going out of port B. Port A is shut and that pipe's cold. When I call for central heating and turn the room stat up, we should see the valve move into mid position and let the heat now through port A to the radiators. You can see the heat's just starting to creep through. So this is a great way of, you can take photos of this, you can save the footage, and you can compile a report. You can use it at the fault finding stage, and you can use it after the job to prove to the customer, to the landlord, that what you've said was correct and what you've done is fix the fault. So I've got to replace this side entry float valve on this high level cistern. It's a nice one. And well, let me show you the one that's in. See that, it's side entry plastic one with the float on the end there. Purple float, you don't see them very often. So I'm taking it out. It's been leaking, dripping from here. The water's off at the minute. But a lot of the time on these plastic threads, you get a hairline crack or just the end goes and they're crap really, you know, like one with a brass shank. So I'm going to take that out and replace it. Obviously that style, side entry, I'm going to replace it with one of these. You might think, how are you going to do that? Because that's a bottom entry valve. I have probably shown you this before, but if I undo this from the bottom with one hand, so like that, and then we've got this thread here, put that in like that. This then becomes the side entry valve. So if I fill up, that's going to connect in the side there, and we can even adjust, we can bring the level of this down so it fills right at the bottom just by pulling it out like that. So that's going to attach on there like that, and then the water which fills in from the bottom there, we can set it right down at the bottom. Now I'm just going to take the old one out and I'll show you something else. So we've only got a very short bit of thread sticking through there. If we offered that up to the edge, it sticks out quite far. So the one we're taking out, this locking nut here, you can set it to how far you need this to stick out of the side of the system. So the new one only comes with one, which tightens up on the outside. So we're going to use one of these off the old one to basically do the same as this, set the level of how much of our brass shank comes out the side of the toilet. Basically like that. So that should be the same, and then this one will go on the outside. So that's the new valve in there. You can see the brass shank, and we've got backing nut there. And that's the new valve in. And we'll just pop the wall back on. See this, and I've got much room at the top, but that's filling from the bottom. Hang on, so it fills right down the bottom because I've adjusted that down. Floats captive inside that sort of chamber, so the float can move even if it's quite close to the siphon there. But there we go, lovely. If you've not seen these before, these valves are made by Viva Sanitary. I get them from my local merchants, but I think you can get them from Toolstation if you're struggling.
Hi guys, my name's Will from Hartley Heating and Plumbing. Thanks Pete for letting me come on and share my I fucked up story. This isn't anything to do with pipe work as such, water coming through the ceiling, but it's still to me quite bad. When I was an apprentice working for my old man, he asked me like he did any day of the week just to come down to the pipe tube and grab some copper. So I did so. Run down, jumped on the step in this previous custom van we had, popped the little key into the top, lifted it out, jumped back down, slammed the door shut. It's a van, it's what we sort of do. But the only problem was this time I heard a massive crack, and yeah, there was a few pieces of black plastic on the floor. What I'd done was left the keys in, and the only thing dangling down was the fob, and this got caught up there between the door and the seal and just smashed into about 10 pieces. So we had no way of locking it. At this point I didn't know if we were able to drive home, so I just had nothing else to do but to walk upstairs and tell him. And yeah, I didn't get the sack, but I got one hell of a telling off. We ended up somehow using the very tiny end there just to get into the ignition, start it. We couldn't actually lock it, but yeah, and after that it was a case of getting a price from Ford for a new fob, which certainly came out of my wages. But yeah, that's sort of my massive I fucked up story. So thanks Pete, cheers for having me on.